where not only have we not gone forward, we have actually fallen backwards, way back. And that is the economic condition facing the working families of our country and the class warfare that has been waged against them. Now, you're not going to hear too many people use that expression, but I do. And I think it's time we got our hands around that issue and our minds around that issue and understand what's going on, and that in many respects there has been a war being waged against the working class of this country for a very long time.
You go, Bernie.
Here is the bottom line. And it's a issue that is not talked about in Congress very much, I got to tell you, and not talked about in the corporate media. And that is that for the last 50 years, we have had an economy and a political system that has been working just great for the people who own the system, the top 1%. And here is the reality. You're not going to see it on TV tonight. The reality is that the status quo of today is exactly what the big money interests want to maintain, because they have never, ever, this is true, ever had it so good in the history of this country. Today we have an economy in which the very, very wealthy, people who are billionaires, are getting much richer, while 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. You all know what I'm talking about, paycheck to paycheck? All right, I grew up in a family, lived paycheck to paycheck. Lived in a rent-controlled apartment. Many of you grew up and are living paycheck to paycheck. And you understand that at the end of the month, after working hard, there ain't nothing that you are saving. You can't afford to take a vacation. Can't afford to take your wife, your husband out for dinner. Can't afford to pay for childcare. Kid gets sick, you may not be able to afford to go to a doctor. So we have today, and let me say it clearly, we have more income and wealth inequality right now, at this moment, than any time in the history of the United States. Further, not only that, we have more concentration of ownership than at any time in the history of America. You know what that means? It means that in sector after sector, whether it's agriculture, whether it's financial services, whether it's media, whether it's the airline industry, you got fewer and fewer large, giant corporations controlling what goes on in that sector, able to control prices, control production. Today, we have more corporate greed than at any time in American history. We have company after company making record-breaking profits as they raise their prices to outrageous levels. Worried about what you're paying in the supermarket and the grocery store? Take a look at the profit margins of the companies in the food industry. Worried about the price of gas? Take a look at ExxonMobil and how they are doing. In sector after sector, these guys are making record-breaking profits and charging us outrageously high prices. And when we talk about class warfare and corporate greed, I think you got an issue here with the Case New Holland Company, right here in Racine. Is that right? Yeah. So let me say a few words about Case as an example. As an example of what corporate greed is about, and it's important that we understand this. We are talking about a company not going bankrupt. In fact, they made a record-breaking profit of more than $2.3 billion last year. Not too bad. We're talking about a company that is spending $1 billion not to improve working conditions in Wisconsin or Iowa, but on stock buybacks to make their executives and stockholders even richer. We're talking about a company whose outgoing CEO, a gentleman named Scott Wine, is receiving a $10 million golden parachute after making $84 million in compensation over the past 3 years. We are talking about a company that after making massive profits is now laying off some 220 workers in Racine as it plans to ship jobs to Mexico, where they can pay workers starvation wages. That is the definition of corporate greed. This is not a company that's struggling. Company making huge profits, but they want more, more, and more, and that is precisely what corporate America is doing all over this country. Today, when we talk about the nature of our economy, it's important to take a deep breath and realize what is going on. Today in America, 3 people own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. You got that? 160 million people have less wealth than 3 people. That is not what this country is supposed to be about. And we've got to change that. Today in America, the top 1% owns more wealth than the bottom 90%. Today in America, you got about 800 billionaires who have nearly doubled their wealth since the passage of the Trump tax breaks for the wealthy. And these 800 people have become almost $3 trillion richer. Today in America, CEOs of major corporations make 350 times more than their average workers. So stop and think about it. Do these CEOs need more health care than their workers? Do they need more food? Do they need more housing? What you're talking about is unprecedented level of greed. It is this belief that I'm a CEO. I'm very wealthy. I can have it all. I can shut down plants. The workers out on the street move to Mexico. I can give myself a huge bonus, a golden parachute, and to hell with the people down below. And this is the mentality that we have got to change if we're going to save this country and the economy for workers. And, you know, there are a lot of angry people, and people say, you know, why are people in America so angry? I'll tell you why they're angry. And you don't see this on TV, and you're surely not hearing it much in the Congress. And that is, the average worker in America today makes almost $50 a week less than he or she did over 50 years ago after adjusting for inflation, despite huge increases in worker productivity. All right, let's stop and think about that. 50 years come and gone. Revolution in technology. Every worker in America now produces far, far, far more than used to be the case. And yet, that worker, that man or woman, is making $50 a week less in inflation-adjusted income. And that is a disgrace. That is why people are angry, and that is why people have every right to be angry. There was a study done a while ago by the Rand Corporation, which is a pretty conservative group, and what they estimated, and this is really incredible as well, that over the last 50 years, there has been an almost $50 trillion transfer of wealth, redistribution of wealth, from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. So, you know, a lot of the guys on top, they say, oh, people like Bernie Sanders, they talk about redistributing wealth. Well, you're damn right, I do. But the truth is, there has been a redistribution, but it's gone in the wrong way. It's gone from working families to the top 1%. And just take a look at what's going on in the economy today. You've got people, I don't know if anybody here, who have credit cards. You know what half of the credit cards are right now on all new credit cards? What half of the interest rates are? Yep. 24%. All right? That's Wall Street making a fortune. Talk about our healthcare system. How's it doing? It's a broken and dysfunctional healthcare system. The good news is that if you are a major stockholder in the insurance companies or the drug companies, you're doing phenomenally well. They're making money hand over fist. But if you're an average American, you can't afford health care. And maybe you're one of the 85 million Americans who are uninsured or underinsured. Now, I want to say a word about health care. So I'm chairman of the committee that deals with this stuff. It's not just that we spend twice as much per capita on health care as the people of any other nation. You got that? Twice. We're spending over $13,000 for every man, woman, and child. In Canada, which somehow manages to provide health care to all their people, they're spending half as much. But despite spending all of that money, our health care outcomes are not good. And there's one issue that we don't talk about enough, and that is life expectancy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Here is the reality. The reality is, despite spending so much money on health care, we live significantly shorter lives than the people of other countries. Do you all know that? And then, on top of that, what we don't talk about, and this is really obscene. It is obscene. If you are rich in America, you will live as long as the people in Europe do, on average. If you're working class or poor, your life expectancy can be 10, 15 years lower than the people on top. All right? Think about that for a moment. In other words, the stress of being in the working class today, or being poor, leads to physical deterioration and a host of diseases, as well as mental health issues. So we need to radically change our healthcare system. In my view, and I think in the view of most Americans, healthcare must be considered a human right, not a privilege. And I want you just to think what it will mean to this country when, if you're sick or your mom's sick or your kids are sick, you can take them to the doctor, any doctor you want, without having to worry about the cost. You want to hear about obscenity? Obscenity is people dealing with cancer, dealing with terrible illnesses who have to go to the hospital. And they can't even concentrate on getting well. You know what they're worried about? Is their family going to go bankrupt when they get a $200,000 bill from the hospital? Can you imagine that? 500,000 families in America face bankruptcy because they committed the crime of getting sick. How disgraceful is that? So our job when we look to the future is to say that, yes, we're going to take on the greed of the insurance companies. We're not going to continue to pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Yes, we're going to guarantee health care to every man, woman, and child as a human right, not a privilege. So we've got a lot of problems facing the country. But here is the good news, and I really see it is enormously good news, and that is the trade union movement, and thank you, trade unionists, is revitalized, it's rejuvenated, it is growing. And if we're going to make progress in transforming this country, let me tell you, it's going to be the trade union movement leading the way. And I say that not just because of it here at the UAW